Hello everybody, long time no see. It really has been a long time no see situation. It's been a year, more or less. I looked at my most recent video, realised it had been a year since I'd uploaded anything, and then realised that you guys have been commenting on my videos and asking questions, and like the rudest asshole in the world, I haven't replied to them. I've just been flat out. The reason I haven't made a video is the same reason I haven't replied to your comments. I like to take time to actually reply properly, not just like generic answer, check this, check that, because that's not how things happen. It might just be the tiniest little adjustment, and telling somebody to check the choke makes no difference. What do you do? Do you open it, close it, make sure it's working? What? So all of your questions they require quite an involved answer. So that's why I'm doing this video, because it's so much easier to just reply in video form. So I've got some beers, I've got some roll-ups. Hopefully I'll be able to get through these and actually upload this time, because I've meant to do this for at least 6 months. So let's get started. Comments about the fact that the video helped is absolutely awesome, but I'm not going to obviously read those out because it's really fucking self-indulgent. It doesn't help anybody, and I massively appreciate all these comments. I didn't put these videos up for adulation of the fact that they help people out. It's just that it's knowledge that everyone should have. It should just be free to a good home, for want of a better way of saying it. You guys, like me, you just need to keep your car running, and I just so happen to have had the ability to, just the free time to fucking fart around with them enough that I've wrapped my head around them somewhat. And that's something that if I can help even one other car go back on the road without somebody having to sink £300 into a Weber conversion and never be happy with the way it runs again, that's good enough for me, you know what I mean? So I really appreciate all the comments about the video helping and things like that. Wicked. But this is purely about answering questions people have got, hopefully in the most detailed way possible. So we'll get started with this poor fucking guy, Carburetor. There's going to be swearing. I'm a couple of points in. That'll have a 4-point unit on it, very likely, and it will be harder to get all the parts for. But again, that's not going to affect how much it costs for me to do it. It just might be that you may need to source some bits. But get in touch, we'll talk about it. Help, my Golf runs on 3 cylinders and the carb is a Pierburg 2E auto choke. Immediately, I don't know if you're referring to cold start, hot start, whatever, but if it's cold start, too much choke. The choke mechanism is set to be too far closed when the engine's cold. 3 screws on the side of the auto choke assembly. Turn it anti-clockwise, which will open the choke flap. You need to do this from stone cold. I see it all the time. Just gently open it up and all of a sudden the car will just pick up and run on 4 cylinders. That is the maximum amount of choke your car needs. I recommend doing it if you can on the coldest day of the year. Like when you go outside and go, Jesus, it's brutal. Like I'm on 2 hoodies right now. This is the right weather for that. 2 hoodies, Dimplex and an oil heater situation. That's when you want to be checking your choke settings, because that is as closed as that choke ever needs to be. So that's my answer to that. Follow up. I have a problem with a lack of power and can't seem to find an answer to this, as my carb doesn't fit any of the carb manual pictures, therefore I can't understand. That previous comment was Cherry 2 Boys. This comment is Paul Thompson. Follow up, I have a problem with the lack of power and can't seem to find an answer to this, as my carb doesn't fit any of the carb manual pictures, therefore I can't understand which variant I'm dealing with. Yeah, fair. I don't know either, mate. Send us a picture on Instagram, something like that. Be more than happy to help if I can. They did a few. So there's a 2E2, 2E3, 2B5... 1B3 in particular that I know just off the back of my hand, back of my ass, however that phrase goes. I know those exist. I don't know. Could be that someone's jury-rigged it together, could be that you had a run-out model, could be that you had a car that happened to have an older engine in it. For example, my GL Rocco was only left the factory 6 months before my CL model Rocco. Both 1.6s, both carburetor. One has a totally different carb and a totally different engine with a different bore and stroke. One has just a 2E2. Everything you'd expect. You would flop a manual open and it all makes sense. The GL, none of it lines up. So it could be that situation. I don't know. So send us a picture. I will say though, if you have a problem with lack of power, it's going to be one of a few things. So either depending on when the power is lacking, when the power isn't there, it's either going to be idle mixture, accelerator pump, or your secondary throttle, which is vacuum operated, isn't working. Or isn't working properly. So check that out. Granche, this looks like a question. Nice video, sir, but I'm not very good at fixing cars and carbs. Also, thank you. I also have a VW Golf Mark II 1.6 2E2 carb. I'm having trouble with it. Car starts but won't stay waked up or idle while in neutral. I tried change the O-ring but unsuccessful. Thanks for any help. It'll be appreciated. I'm sure it would have been probably a year ago before I didn't fucking reply. Car starts but won't stay waked up or idle while in neutral. So I'm presuming it's an automatic from the fact you've specified neutral, because likely if it was a manual you'd just say dip the clutch and it stalls. Tried changing the O-ring but unsuccessful. I presume you mean by O-ring you mean the one in the manifold for coolant flow. Smart. I would check the mounting flange, the actual rubber flange that the carburetor sits on. They're notorious for splitting, and if you get too much air coming in, it destroys the vacuum and the carburetor can't operate properly. If it just like fires but then stalls again, that could very likely be that your choke is stuck, especially if it's still doing it while cold. And the other thing I would check would immediately be for crap inside the carburetor. Float bowl in particular, some bits of debris, something, ball bearings, a grapefruit, you never know. Especially if you haven't had the car long. I know you don't say that here, but if you haven't had the car for long and haven't ever had the carburetor off and apart, probably something like that. Someone stored the carb in a really shitty place for a bit while they were rebuilding it, or they weren't careful, or they had a bloody diaphragm in a fuel pump break up and loads of little bits of rubber got in the carburetor. You never know. Check, yeah, have a look inside the float bowl. It's not a huge effort to rebuild it. It's 4 screws to take the carb top off, and your float's just in there. Check it for some shit. Chances are it's probably got a little bit of something. But check all that other stuff first, because it's all on the outside. You don't have to strip the carb down to find that out. Paul Thompson again. Oh, YouTube's doing that janky fucking thing. Sorry, Paul Thompson. So, Ari, your previous question, I've just seen your first question. That'll be why you said follow up at the start of it. Hi, your videos really help me understand my Pierburg, but I need your opinion on my, I think, unique situation. My Pierburg has stamped on it Pierburg 2E, which as far as I know means it's a 2E3 variant. Not necessarily. However, on the upper part it has 027129015G, which means it's a 2E2. Can you confirm I have a hybrid Pierburg? No, I can't. I've been meaning to do a video on Pierburg serial numbers for a while, because I've got all the documentation that means that I can do one of those videos, but as you can tell from the fact it's taken me a year to reply to your comment, I haven't had a chance. However, what I will say is I don't know about 2E3s. My world is mostly 2E2 and 1B3s, but I don't know if all 2E3s have 2E stamped on them. I do know that some 2E2s have 2E stamped on them. So it could be that it is just a 2E2. In fact, I don't know if this is one of them. I have got in my box of shit that you've seen, which is no longer here, by the way. I got a lockup to store stuff in. Is it? Yeah, yeah. So this is a 2E2. This is categorically a 2E2 carburetor. But right there, it's got 2E stamped into the casing, and the model number, the part number on this is 027129015Q. So, yeah, I mean, looking at that, this is a Q, yours is a G. Different variant, but I'd say it's a 2E2. I'm sorry it took me a year to answer that question. I am going to be doing a video on that. Right. Holy shit. Oh, this guy only came back a month ago. I might find 12 and a half minutes into this video, I might actually be able to help someone. Hello mate, I need your help in a Pierburg 2E from a 1.8 DS engine of a B2 Passat. Is that the 5-pot? I've never heard of a DS engine. Car runs fine, but on cold start, don't go to 2000 RPM, and it idles like 500 RPM. The car runs fine, but on cold start, this is Golf 2 TD, by the way. The car runs fine on cold start, but don't go to 2000 RPM and idle like 500. Okay, so it's not going up to the 2000 RPM and down to 1200, then 900. It idles like shit and sits at 500 RPM. Getting warm, it rises to 900 RPM standard and stays like that in working temperature. I have boiled the wax stat, all the vacuum hoses are good. I have a video that I can send you with a 3-point unit working. Can you send me your Facebook or WhatsApp address to talk to you? You can find me on WhatsApp, no problem at on Facebook, no problem at all, by the way. I'm just on Facebook as Kyle, so Kyle, my first name. My middle name is One More. So as if you're saying, I'll have one more, but all as one word. Kyle, One More, Mundy. Mundy. Feel free to try and add us on there. Like, sorry if I'm a bit standoffish with you. If I've never heard of you before, then chances are I'm going to be like, who the fuck's this? But you know what I mean. Yeah, by all means. I'm sorry it took me a month to get back to you. Some of these guys have been waiting a year, so it's all good. But I would say, looking at that it's probably choke. For it to, the reason I say it's choke and not wax stat related is your wax stat controls the speed, your choke controls your fuel mixture, but if it's too rich, it will bog down and run like shit, hence the lower engine speed. So you did the right thing. Always just if you buy a new Rocco or a new Golf and it's got a Pierburg, boil the fucking wax stat, because you never know. It's worth it. It's free to do. You just need to boil a kettle. It takes 20 minutes and might fix a load of problems you didn't even know you had. Especially if you're new to these. Anyway, I think it's your choke. Especially if the 3-point unit's working. It could just be that it's running so rich that even with the 3-point unit doing its job, it physically can't pick up because it's dumping so much fuel in. So check your auto choke first. Make sure that's so same drill as before. If you've watched this video, it's back there. 3 screws, gently rotate it anti-clockwise. You'll probably find it picks up. If your 3-point unit is working perfectly, don't worry about what I'm about to say. But if it's not, then check your TTV, thermo time valve. Watch me not have one here, because I gave one to someone the other day. And all my parts are in the lockup. See, this is why I keep hold of crap everywhere, because more often than not, it's actually useful. TTV, little round guy on the side with 2 vacuum ports and an electrical connector. If you're stood in front of the car, this might not help you because you've got a Passat, and some Passats had a longitudinal engine, didn't they? Anyway, as you look at the front of the engine, the TTV should be on the left where the electrical connectors are. I hope that helps. By all means, get in touch. Gary Swain. Hi mate, you mentioned on this video 16 minutes 15 about the filter and well, it says ABS, so I'm paraphrasing here. Filter and remove it, waste of time. I hope you didn't have a waste of time taking that filter out. You'll thank me. Well, you won't thank me because you'll never notice it being a problem, but I have had problems with it. If that's not what you're saying, my fucking bad. I'm having issues with my T25 not starting, especially after long journeys, 2-hour trip, then an hour later it won't start. Easy start doesn't work anymore, fucking hell. You know you've got problems when spraying ether into the carburetor is not fixing it anymore. Right, you have to pour petrol into the carb. Any ideas? I also noticed the petrol doesn't come into both carbs. The one with the choke flat does, the one next to it doesn't. The one next to it won't open unless the one in front of it. So the one you're referring to that doesn't have a choke on is your secondary. That's vacuum operated. So the first choke, the primary, which has got your choke flap on, that needs to be open all the way, which allows the secondary throttle to open. So that'll be why you're not seeing anything going in, because to be honest with you, if you were to rev a 2E2 with the car just sitting there idling, you'd redline it, float the valves, and probably stick a rod through the block before that secondary opened. Yeah, it's all done on vacuum. So when you clap the throttle one and it kicks open, the secondary kicks open as well. I did that wrong. So when you clap the primary, as that opens, this will open when it's time for it to open. That's why it's vacuum operated, so you don't get any bogging down. So that's not a problem. With regards to the hard starting after an hour of sitting, run back, I would maybe recommend do an experiment first. Try, if you can get hold of a non-return valve, like motherfucker, I had one right here. If you can get hold of a non-return valve, like, drum roll, gone. It's gone. This is shocking. This is why YouTube was invented, so that thick fucks like me could not prepare to give people advice. Get a non-return valve that's petrol safe. Run it in line on your inlet, so the fuel send to the carburetor. Maybe do it, but here's a plan. So you come out of your, I'm just making this shit up as I go. No, I'm joking. You got your swirl pot, I would imagine. I don't know what motor your T25's got in it, but I would imagine it's got a swirl pot. So that's where it comes up from the fuel pump, and then one goes off to the carburetor, one goes off to a usually sort of clear line to return it back to the tank. The one that goes off from the swirl pot to the carburetor, try fitting a non-return valve in that and see if maybe it's actually siphoning fuel out. That could do the trick, and it's only a couple of quid. I mean, it couldn't hurt anyway, to be honest with you, because ultimately, if fuel pressure builds up enough to send fuel back to the return, it will do that whether the non-return valve's in there or not. All it will mean is when you turn the engine off and there's no fuel pressure anymore, the fuel can't seep back from the carburetor to the tank, because obviously, well, I don't know about the T25 actually. I'm just trying to remember where the fuel tank sits in relation to the carb, because it is possible for it to, especially if the float's sticking, it's possible for it to siphon some fuel out. So it might be worth a go. I've seen that before. In fact, I've watched a guy drive a bay window camper back home with a jerry can that just happened to be above the carburetor. Like, it's astonishing fuel's ability to gravity feed. Like, he had a failed fuel pump, and he literally just siphoned it, started it running into the carb, and ran the engine. And just float level alone was enough to get him home. Yeah, it was a mile. It was. Do you know what I mean? He didn't drive to fucking Florida through the sea with it like that. But what I mean is, for even short periods of time, and you're saying it's taken like an hour, that, I mean, it could well be something like that. Hopefully it's something that simple. I really do wish you well with that, because there's not a lot else I can think of that's Pierburg specific. It's more into just general mechanics. Right, So I hope that helps. Mark Havel. Hi, I'm using a Carb 2E2 on my 1.4 NV. 1.4 NV. Vauxhall? Is that Vauxhall Nova? I know Vauxhall used the 2E2 for a bit. Anyway, doesn't matter. Hopefully it'll be the same problem. So what happens is when I'm going down a straight and then take my foot off the accelerator pedal, the engine gives high revs for a few seconds, then settles down. Is there any way of stopping that? Thanks, Mark. Yep, check your throttle linkages. Could be that your throttle linkage is slightly seized. Elsewhere, a vacuum leak at the 3-point unit. Because that 3-point unit should really be, when you're hard on the throttle, that 3-point unit should have sucked back all the way to cut off the fuel, not the other way around. So it could be that you've got a small vacuum leak, just a small one, that's causing it to creep out over time, and then when you drop the throttle pedal, and the pressure of the spring in the throttle plate is pressing on the vacuum diaphragm and pushing it back down to idle speed. So it could well be something like that, maybe. Good luck, man, and also cool that you're running a carburetor that was like the only carburetor Volkswagen used for such a long time. You're running it on something that's got so much tech support in terms of other shit you could put on it. That's really cool. And fair play. If it is Volkswagen, I might be totally wrong here, but interesting. Put it that way, interesting. Cool. Tom Law. Thank you so much for these Pierburg videos. Welcome. They've gone a long way to demystifying these carbs for me. Good. I'm glad. They're not all that difficult once. It's forums that fuck up Pierburgs. So many people who never bothered to just RTFM, and they don't know how it works, which means no one else is allowed to know how it works. Anyway, I wonder if you could perhaps give me some advice. So far I've renewed the carb-based rubber, as it was badly split. I renewed all the knackered vac lines as per your video. Nice one. Found my TTV and cut-off solenoid fucked. Well, I'm paraphrasing. He says to be kaput, but fucked. They get 12 volts but no clicking, and the 3-point unit withdraws fully from startup. Weird. Okay, yeah, right, fine. Put the wax stat in boiling water and found it seems to be working properly. But, in all capital letters, the car idles at 2,000 to 2,200 RPM cold. Should do. Lacks power and runs on when switched off. Seems to be running on the wax stat as a 3-point unit never comes into play at all. Sounds to me an awful lot like somebody has fiddled around with your wax stat settings. You'll need to reference the video, this video, in fact, because my one Pierburg example I've still got here is in bits. Hopefully this will help. So, throttle linkage. So, this has to be done cold. I think what's happened is someone has basically ignored what I said on this video of never doing this hot, and they've done it hot, and that's your problem. So, this guy here, not this one, leave this one alone for a minute. This guy here, when you first start the engine, if it comes off of... no, it can't do, because your 3-point unit's not working properly. Your 3-point unit should begin its life sticking out of the carburetor, opening the throttle. You should flick the key. Once it's finished doing its cold start, where it's protruding all the way, it should withdraw to the idle position, and then it's over to the wax stat. Once it does that, once it's over to the wax stat, slacken this off, turn the throttle anti-clockwise, as you're looking at it, as though you were making the adjustment. Turn the throttle anti-clockwise, try and bring it down. Then the wax stat will be at maximum withdrawal, and then it will extend and hopefully bring it down to the correct idle speed. Once that's done, you're going to hate me for this, but once that's done, then you can start tuning it. Because before all that shit's working properly, you don't stand an ice cube in hell's chance of being able to square everything else up. If it lacks power, it could be choke adjustment, because again, they will lack power if the choke's too lean. I know I always harp on about chokes are too rich because that's how they're mostly set up, but it could be if the choke's set too lean, it physically hasn't got enough fuel to be able to produce any power. So yeah, I would go with that first. Try and get you need to have your 3-point unit and your wax stat doing what they're supposed to do before you can start ironing out any power problems. After that, check your choke settings. You want it to be as rich as it can be before it starts to run rough. So like I say, that needs to be, as per previous advice, coldest day of the year from stone cold. So this is going to probably take a couple of goes, because what you're going to need to do, get that shit right. But in order to get that shit right, the engine's already going to have been running for a couple of minutes. Shut it off, leave it half a day, make sure it's stone cold on a really cold day, then go out there and start with your choke settings. If your choke settings are fine, then I would look at the accelerator pump, because that is another common one. People set it to... People look at it and think that... Let me get this right. People look at it and think that all the way down, because it's on a swept curve like that, people think that at the bottom of that, that's the most accelerator pump you're going to get. It's not. What you're controlling is the throw on the accelerator pump. So that is not only the amount of fuel it's putting in, but when it's putting it in. People put it all the way to the bottom like that, and what that means is you're getting the minimum throw for the longest duration. And if that happens, my battery decides it's going to start trying to go flat, I think. Well, fuck it, I'm just going to power through, whatever. If that happens, you end up with an awkward situation where your accelerator pump is not putting in enough fuel and it's doing it over a long period of time, which is why you can lack power. I hope that makes sense. Give me a shout if it doesn't. I'll be more than happy to help. Best of luck. That was Tom Law. Luckily, that's it for this amount of comments. So I'm going to call this part 1. Charge my phone, have another crack at it in a couple of days when I eventually get a chance. So anyway, I really hope this has helped everybody out. If it hasn't, I'm sorry. But like I say, that's just a few of your crazy amount of questions answered that I've just been too lazy to sort out. Thank you so much for watching. I don't do the like, comment, subscribe fucking bullshit because I'm not doing it for that. So anyway, I'm going to have another tinny, stick my phone on charge, and if it gets a chance to do it this side of the end of my evening, then I may be back for part 2. Have a good one.